Hope you're well. Good to have you with me on a Friday afternoon. Things have already gone wrong. Cameras are moving, laptops are moving. It is going to be the way I think that this afternoon is going to be like. I have been kind of wanting to do this for a little while and haven't really ever got around to it for loads of reasons, because you're doing all sorts of other things. But as I said earlier, I get loads of times when people ask me about different things to think about, whether it's football or whatever stuff we're talking about, whether it's the psychology stuff or whether anything else that we happen to be doing. So I thought this would be a good chance for me to throw it out there, to tell people I'm going live, see if anyone is interested. As I said before, this could last 5 seconds or it could last 55 minutes. So the plan is maybe from 4 to 5, but we could easily be cutting it off very, very shortly before that. So let's see what happens whenever we get a first couple of questions coming in. So I have gone out on this platform called Restream, which is pretty cool. You're able to go out on LinkedIn, which is a big thing for me. It's probably where I have the majority of all my work. Anything that I'm doing on my working side always goes on LinkedIn first, so I always get loads of interaction on there. So I'm hoping on LinkedIn now and see if we get some sort of engagement. We shall see. First question here, which is good. Thank goodness we've actually got a question coming in, which is pretty shocking, to be honest. I didn't think I was going to have any questions. Thought I'd be sitting here by myself, scratching myself. But first question is there a second series of the podcast? Which is a great question to have, because I'm really, really happy with the podcast. I have been, it's taken a long time to get the podcast up and running. It's amazing when you think about it, because podcasts are just so numerous. They are everywhere you look. I'm friends with Jake Humphrey, who obviously, if anyone is a football fan, they'll know him from BT Sport as a presenter, but he's a big Norwich City fan, so I've known him for a long time. And seeing what Jake Humphrey and Professor Damien Hughes have done on their high performance podcast, I was just blown away by the level of content, the quality of guests they got, the nuggets, the real, amazing things that they were drawn out of their guests. And obviously all their guests were, world-class performers in loads of different fields. And so whenever I saw what Jake and Damien were doing, I just thought, I've always wanted to do this podcast. And it actually came about because last year, during the first lockdown, I actually was sitting at home and thinking, I'm doing my own kind of, I'm doing my bit, doing my social distancing, I'm staying away from people, but don't really feel like I'm helping the situation. And so I thought I'd raise some money for the NHS. So I decided to just reach into my phone and get in touch with 15 to 20 people that I thought would be good guests, that are pretty high profile. And it's amazing just to be able to look into your phone, send a few messages to a few people And like my first guest was Jason McAteer, so any Liverpool fans would know Jason McAteer, or Republic of Ireland fans. And he was brilliant. He was just so funny, so many stories, great crack. And then you go in from the football side, and then I was having people like Will King, who, if you've ever heard of the shaving brand King of Shaves, Will King founded that about 20 years ago. And I think they've sold something like about 500 million products. It's something ridiculous. And managed to get Will on there talking about the entrepreneurial side, the business side of how he's done it, and really just trying to understand that mindset, because it's always been something I've loved. And for my own career, been able to utilize that elite performance around my mindset and psychology is something that I really, really am passionate about. And that's why I've been working in that subject. And even when I decided to stop playing football for Norwich City about 11 years ago now, 2010, I just knew I wanted to work in this subject of peak performance and mental performance and psychology, and so trying to understand through all these guests that I had on that series of interviews I did last year during lockdown was just really, really interesting, really, really important for me to get that out to other people so they know what the sort of the highs and lows people go through whenever they're trying to build a business, trying to be successful. So because I did that last year and that was really good fun, say people like Ralph Little, the actor from the royal family, or he's the main lead in Death in Paradise now, all the way through to like Colin Murray or John Hart and whoever else I was speaking to. So really enjoyed doing that last time. But whenever I wanted to start my own podcast this year, The Psychology of Success, I just saw what Jake Humphrey and Damien Hughes were doing. And I just really tried to copy it. And, that expression of, it's not broke, don't fix it. And so really all I wanted to do was trying to get high profile people who had been successful and then just trying to understand why they're successful. And what I found was that in that first series of interviews last year in lockdown, I realized that whenever you ask people, like, what is it? Why have you done what you've done? What is the kind of the reasoning behind that? What is the, almost like the golden nugget or the golden thread that ties it all together? And it's really interesting because not many people could tell me what it is the reason why they were successful. And so I was fascinated by this. And because I thought, well, if you are successful, then there must be a reason why you're successful. But actually, it's two different skill sets. I suppose one skill set is being able to understand what you do, how you do it, get to the very top of your profession, and that's brilliant. But actually, there's a completely different skill set and understanding how that happens or how you can do it, or probably more importantly, how you can replicate it. So one of the things that I thought, well, if I ask the high profile people, the really successful people that I was speaking to on my podcast series, I thought, well, listen, if they're all successful, they might understand it. But actually, again, same thing happened. One of the first guests I had on was a guy called Leon Lloyd. And Leon is a former England rugby player. And Leon has had amazing success in his life. And when I say it, in terms of his rugby life, he'd won, I think, 6 or 7 Premiership titles with Leicester Tigers. I think he played in maybe 5 European Cup finals or Heineken Cup finals. And he won 2 of them, and he scored a winning try in one of them. And so the people like that who've been at very top level and elite performers, and then just trying to understand why they do that, was really, really fascinating. We had people like Chris Akabusi, even had a quarterback who used to play for the Miami Dolphins, Jay Fiedler, who was, that was really fascinating, understanding what it's like to come in and take the place of the world-class, world-famous quarterback called Dan Marino, who used to play for the Dolphins. And Jay Fiedler came in and took his place after Dan Marino moved on. So all of these different things that I'm trying to understand from these people was really the reason why I wanted to do the podcast series, and I'm delighted that it just finished on my last episode. I think we did like 18 or 19 episodes, and the last one was a girl called Emma Wiggs. And Emma is just one of the most remarkable people I've ever met in my life. She has essentially got a story where she went to school. I think she was on a gap year between her kind of finishing her levels before going to university. And she was working in Australia. I think she was, picking strawberries or doing some sort of manual labor. And she caught a virus when she was in Australia. And when she came back home, and as this virus got worse and worse, and she eventually lost the use of her legs. And Emma, having gone through that, absolutely horrible episode in her life, has then gone on to be an 8-time world champion in paracanoeing. And to have Emma on the last episode before she went out to the Paralympics in Tokyo right now, and she's actually just going to be competing in the next day or so. And having people like that and hearing the stories and hearing the determination and dedication of why people can get through some of the most difficult circumstances is just fascinates me, and I love hearing those kind of stories of what it is. So Emily, thank you very much for your question. That was really kind. Good to get us up and running, get the first question up there. If you have any more questions, get them in to me, whether you're on Instagram, as you can see, plenty of people here who've joined us, whether you're on LinkedIn, and I can just send out a message on LinkedIn and Twitter. to see whether anybody wants to get the questions in, or Facebook. This is going live on Facebook as well. So hopefully we can get a few more questions in and see where we go from that. You can see where we go from there. So at the minute, as I said, this could be kind of like a 5-minute jobby, or it could be lasting for 55, 60 minutes. But we'll see what happens, see where we go with it. And at the minute, it's really, really hard to have Instagram up in front of you, to have the laptop open with Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I think it's gone out on YouTube as well. And then trying to just keep up with the technology to see who's there, see who's asking a question, see who's just sending stupid messages. Class, you know what it's going to be like. You know there's no way that people are going to take you seriously whenever you do this, because already on my Twitter, the notifications, there clearly are no messages at all or questions. It's more just people taking the mickey and throwing in random photos and and questions that you definitely wouldn't be putting out live on social media. So classic. This is, yeah, I should have known that was going to happen. Should have known that you're going to have some friends, or supposedly friends, who would throw things in at you that you definitely can't put out. But anyway, we'll be moving swiftly on past that. So let's see, let's get a wee bit of crack going on Twitter. Any chance here, lads? Okay. So let's see what happens when you get out on Twitter. I don't know whether you have to be more, I don't know, controversial. Is that what you need to be whenever you're on Twitter? Because I've got a good mate that I played with at Norwich City called Darren Huckerby. And honestly, on Twitter, it's like his alter ego. It's like he just almost is a caricature of himself. He absolutely hammers his wife, and his wife, Lindsay, is the most lovely woman you'd ever meet. She is such a nice girl. She, honestly, whenever you see her, you wouldn't think, butter would melt in her mouth. She does have a bit of a mouth on her like a sailor, but that's not what we're talking about. It's more to do with how Hux treats her on Twitter, and he just constantly hammers her. And I'm like, is that what you need to do? You need to just like start throwing out all sorts of slagging and abuse and just really trying to be as controversial as possible. But just don't know if that's my game. Don't know if that's what I want to do, whether I want to just throw stupid statements out there, because there are plenty of people who do that just to try and get a bit of attention. But listen, there's so many things to talk about. If you are interested in getting involved and seeing if there's anything you'd like to hear or discuss, of course, big topic at the minute is all to do with the football transfer window, and of course my old team, Tottenham Hotspur, and Harry Kane staying. And I actually just saw on a friend of mine, Samantha Johnson, who's a TV presenter out in Turkey. She just put out of saying how, Mbappe told PSG he wants to leave, and they're like, yeah, no problem. Ronaldo told Juventus that he wants to leave, and they're like, right, no problem. And Harry Kane tells Tottenham Hotspur he wants to leave, and they're like, no, you're not leaving. I just thought that was really, really surprising that he hasn't actually left, because there are clearly, a number of teams in the world who would love Harry Kane. Probably every team in the world would love Harry Kane, but how many teams could afford him? I just happened to go to the Man City, Norwich City game at the weekend, last Saturday at the Etihad, and it is frightening to think that Harry Kane could have potentially joined that team, because the squad that they had on the pitch was outstanding. And obviously Jack Grealish was there, and he scored on his home debut and all the rest of it. £100 million player. But the players that weren't playing or weren't even on the bench, because even people like Sterling was on the bench, Fernandinho, the captain, was on the bench. All these like top class players were all on the bench. And then the people who weren't even in the squad were people like De Bruyne, Phil Foden, who was injured. And you're just thinking, wow, this is incredible. So almost if they had got Harry Kane, I think that could have been that would have been very, very tough for anyone to try and even compete or get close to Man City this year. But I'm glad for me anyway, for Spurs, for me as a Spurs fan, definitely love seeing my old team doing well. And Harry Kane is just, I think he's an exceptional player. And if any of you have noticed, I've just got a little kind of haircut, quite sharp, quite fresh today. But I was in the barbers with the guy who was cutting my hair, and happened to be a Liverpool fan, but that's neither here nor there. And he's talking about how Harry Kane is overrated. And he's like, "Are you into football?" And I went, "No, and he said, "Who's your team?" And I said, "Well, like to see Spurs doing well." I said, "Oh, you're not another Spurs fan, are you?" And honestly, he started going on about Harry Kane. He's so overrated. I was just sitting there going, right, okay, yeah, he's overrated. Okay, really? Do you think so? And he starts going, yeah, it's just like, we'd never even get into the Liverpool squad. That stage, I almost like got up and walked out. But I'm thinking, hold on a minute. This guy has, how many golden boots has he won? How many times has he, golden boot just in the Premier League alone? I think he won the golden boot in the last World Cup. Just an exceptional player. And this guy, douche, just going, yeah, no, overrated. Wouldn't get into our team, wouldn't get into our squad. I'm just thinking, okay, yep, thanks very much for that opinion. We can move it here. But good to see whenever I'm putting out tweets saying like, any chance here, lads, I'm dying, of people who are on the live and then they're retweeting me and still not coming in with a question. I'm like, that's not helping. I need some interaction here. I need some questions. I'm hoping like in 3, 4, 5 months time, we'll look back on this and there's big questions. People know what you're doing. People get involved, want to have a bit of crack of what we're doing with just throwing in any questions. Then it would be, hopefully that's the way it's going to go. But first time, you think it could be, it might be a bit slow, which obviously it has. But interestingly, I've just got another question coming in here, which I don't know if it's a good question or not. This is actually puts me under a lot of pressure now, because the question is, if you had to pick one, Norwich or Spurs, who would you pick? You can't ask me that, can you? That's a terrible question to ask. That's like, that's like your children. If you had 2 children, how do you choose? Although, if there are any parents watching or listening, do you have a favorite child? Because I know people always say, but you love them all the same, but come on, do you? Do you really? I don't know. The only reason why I'm saying this is just because my mum, who, we've got 4 kids in our family, and my mum all the time, she was coming across to Norwich. She'd come over on, the weekend, have a few drinks, and we'd always just have this bit of crack, saying, come on, mum, you must be able to tell us you have got a favorite child, because we all knew that it was our youngest, that my younger brother. So I'm third out of the 4 kids, and then my younger brother is definitely the favorite. We all know he's the favorite, the blue-eyed boy. And so we're just trying to get my mum to admit this and going, come on, tell us, who's your favorite? And she's like, oh no, I don't have a favorite. We don't have. And then my dad said, no, we don't have a favorite, not at all. And then after, I don't know how many drinks we had, it was after midnight. And I was like, come on, just whispering in her ear, sitting next to her on the sofa. Come on, just tell us who's your favorite. She goes, okay, I have a favorite, but I would never tell you. I was like, what? Where's that come from? How did you suddenly go from, no, I don't have any favorite children, they're all, I love you all the same, you're all the same, I love you exactly equally, to, oh no, I have a favorite child, but I would never tell you. Oh my God, that was awful to hear from your own mother, but I think we already knew it anyway. Anyway, so the whole point is, the question that I had, and why I've gone off on a massive tangent there, is because the question is, how do you decide between the 2 clubs that you played for, that you kind of had your best experiences at, and how do you decide whether you love one more than the other, or prefer one more than the other? This is the interesting thing, because as a fan, and hopefully I'll try and use an example of my 2 brothers who are both Liverpool fans, they absolutely love Liverpool. They want to see them win. When they do win, they're delighted. When they lose, they're pretty down, pretty devastated. But Liverpool have never ever rejected them. So this is an interesting part of it, and this probably goes back to the psychology. This goes back to, you know, the experiences in football and how it very much molds you as a person and can really shape you. Because Liverpool have never turned around to my two brothers and went, lads, listen, you're not for us anymore. We don't need you as fans. Can you go and, you know, find another club? Because that's effectively what happens in football whenever you have, you know, a number of clubs that I was really fortunate to play for, from Spurs to Norwich to Burnley to Luton Town and back to Norwich again. And essentially every single time, every one of those clubs has just said, you know, see you later. You're not for us. You're just, we don't think you're at the level we need. So whenever a club turns around and says that to you, and Tottenham Hotspur was whenever George Graham was the manager at the time. So I don't know whether it was because he was an Arsenal man or, you know, just because he didn't think I was. He actually said I was too small to be in the Premier League, which, you know, it's his opinion, and that's fine. And possibly could have been right, because I only played about 20 games, so I don't know whether it was too small to play, you know, continuously or successfully in the Premier League. But I suppose on the other hand, I did still play, you know, in the Premier League, so don't know whether he was right or not. And then whenever it came to Norwich City, I had a manager called Nigel Worthington, and again, he was from Northern Ireland, and we, for long periods of the time, he actually, you know, played me. He wanted me in the team, but there was loads of times when he didn't want me around. And again, this is the interesting part of being a footballer. You know, you do have these ups and downs in football of whether managers like you. Is there something you can do? Is there something you can do to probably stay more on side with them? It's really, really difficult to keep that relationship for, like, Nigel and I were with nearly 7 years at Norwich City. But actually, he tried to release me 3 times in the 7 years I was there. So this is the really interesting part of it, because whenever someone's trying to release you and reject, until eventually got the stage where it was actually Peter Grant was the manager at Norwich City, and then he was the one who said, listen, wee man, you're not for us anymore. So this is the feelings you have when you have two teams who you've really loved being there, sort of 6 years and 8 years respectively at those two teams, so, you know, the large majority of my 16-year playing career, and yet they both tell you to go and do one. It's really hard to say that you're a fan. So I don't know if that's a really long-winded way of saying that I don't want to pick between Norwich or Spurs, because that's probably too hard, because I do love them equally the same, the way my mum said that to me. Anyway, okay, let's get back to Twitter. And who have we got here? What was it like playing against Ronaldo? You think he'd be back at United? Really good question. I think that's from a young Michael. Is that a Michael in Ireland somewhere? What's it like playing against Ronaldo? Think he'd be back at United? I absolutely don't think he'll come back to Man United. I think that Man United probably should take him, because they could always do with the goals, even though they've done really, really well in the last couple of years of getting back up to that, you know, at least challenging for the title. And this year they definitely look like a very, very good team, very strong team. And I think Ronaldo would add to any teams, but like Harry Kane and that stupid barber that said, you know, he's overrated. Ronaldo still, what is he, 36, 37 maybe? And yet still, you know, he's going to score 20 goals every season still now, probably until he's 40, because just the most frightening athlete or the most frightening player that I've ever seen. And I don't even mean whenever I played against him. I'm talking about just over the last 15 years. I think what's really hard to understand as a kind of, whether it's a supporter or being outside of the kind of the professional football world, is just how good the Messis and the Ronaldos and the, you know, like a De Bruyne or a Sterling or Harry Kane, when you just realize just how hard it is to do that. And that's why I just think the money that these guys are being paid now is so ridiculous. You know, there's just so many people talking about getting too much money. It's, you know, it's far too much for a player to be having. But I would definitely say that I think they deserve it. I think they deserve every single penny, because if you're the best in the world at what you do, then I think you deserve that kind of money. And I just saw today on the news that, is it Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple? I think he's got a share package that's worth somewhere in the region of 750 million. And I'm like, brilliant, well done you, because you've taken a company that was already amazingly successful under Steve Jobs, and you've taken it to, you know, new levels. What is it, like $2.5 trillion? Apple's now worth like the richest or the biggest company in the world. And you're just thinking, if you've been at the lead under that pressure, because we know companies definitely, you know, struggle to have that long-term success. I think on average it's about a 20-year is about the sort of the average of a company, and to be able to take the biggest company in the world and still go and be successful, not just be successful, keep growing and keep getting better and better. I think they deserve it, and that's why, going back to the Ronaldos and the Messis, I think they deserve every penny. And it's really interesting seeing it's almost like a changing of the guard at the minute, with, you know, Messi leaving Barcelona, with Ronaldo looks like he's about to leave Juventus, and I've got a good friend called Matteo Bonetti, who is he's an Italian football analyst who used to work for beIN Sports and ESPN. He's now joined CBS in America, and he just said that it was a bad fit. Ronaldo going to Juventus was just a bad fit, and he thinks it could be a good thing for Juventus for them to leave, because they've got a better chance of being successful when they're not just focused and dominated on one single player, of having Ronaldo. And you can imagine if Ronaldo's in your team, then, you know, everything's going to be based around him. It's really interesting, but still comes back to these guys when they're in their prime, when they were just at the very, very top of, you know, world football, then I think they deserve to get every single penny, because they are so outstanding. And to try and put this into some sort of level, if I think, well, I work for, you know, 20, 25 years just to try and get to that level of, well, as hard as high as I could get. And I got to say this level, and that level was the league below the Premier League, which is, you know, for some people that was really good. For other people, it was, you know, nothing special. But for me, I was pretty much trying to get the maximum out of myself. So I'm getting to this level of championship. And I think, well, I played 20 games in the Premier League. What about someone who played 50 games? Well, they've already done better than me. What about someone who played, I don't know, 50 games for a mid-table team in the Premier League? Then you're already putting it up there. What about someone who, you know, played 400 games in the Premier League? And suddenly you go from that to suddenly someone who played 300-400 games for a mid-table team to a top 6 team to a top 4 team. What about someone who played 300-400 games for a team that was winning league titles? So, you know, even throwing someone like Phil Neville into the equation, or John O'Shea, no matter what you think of those players, they were winning league titles, they were winning cups, they were winning all these different pieces of silverware. And they were still only at this level because the John O'Sheas and the Phil Nevilles, compared to the, I don't know, who you want to throw into the equation there, whether it was an Andy Cole, a Dwight York, or, you know, whoever, even my old teammate, Teddy Sheringham, you know, they were all super exceptional, you know, incredible players. And even those guys weren't as good as your Ryan Giggs, most decorated player in English football history, your Paul Scholes, who's just my favourite ever Premier League player, to your Steven Gerrard, who again I think was just the best all-round player in the Premier League. And then you compare him to like the Patrick Vieira, who won the World Cup and and a European Championships and the double, and it was part of the invincible. And you just keep climbing up the ladder of football, and you just go, do you know what? And then you have Messi and Ronaldo up there at the top of that. And so for me, all of those reasons are just why I think these guys were incredible athletes, absolute exceptional talents, amazing footballers, and deserved every single penny they get. Okay, great questions. Glad we got at least a couple of questions here. Was going to do it about sort of 5 o'clock, but I think that is plenty for now. Half an hour. First time. If I start putting this out a bit more on the socials and let people know about this, hopefully we might get a bit more interaction, a bit more slagging. And then one message from America: would you say you're more Plunkett or Lisburn? That's obviously a local question for people in Belfast. but I had 5 years in Lisburn Youth and 1 year at Plunkett, but love them equally the same. Thanks very much. Okay, everybody, enjoy your weekend. Thanks very much for getting involved, and I will speak to you soon. Hope you've had a good time.